The alien observers found Earth by accident. Their long-range sensors picked up weak signals drifting through space. These signals were old, broken, and full of noise. To the observers, this meant only one thing. The species that sent them was damaged and near the end. They studied the records of the colonies first. The data showed great cities, powerful ships, and long wars. Then came the collapse. The records ended in fire, silence, and loss. What remained were scattered humans running from extinction. The observers believed this was proof of weakness. From far away, Earth looked small and quiet. There were no great fleets around it. No strong defense lines. No signs of control. The observers compared Earth to other worlds they had tested before. Those worlds fell quickly. Earth, they decided, would fall even faster. A small monitoring craft was sent. It was smooth, dark, and silent. It did not glow or leave trails. It followed the last human warship from a safe distance. The observers named the ship Galactica in their records. It was old, damaged, and slow. To them, it looked like a wounded animal that did not know it was dying. Inside Galactica, life was hard and loud. The ship was crowded with people who had lost everything. The halls were filled with tired faces and quiet fear. Food was counted carefully. Water was shared in small amounts. Every sound of metal felt like a warning. Commander William Hayes walked through the ship each day. He did not wear pride on his face. He wore worry. His uniform was clean, but his eyes showed many sleepless nights. He knew the fleet was running out of time. Supplies were low. Morale was weaker. He stood in the command center and listened to reports. One officer spoke about fuel levels. Another spoke about broken systems. Each report felt heavier than the last. Hayes nodded and gave short answers. He did not lie. He did not promise easy days. The people trusted him because he stayed calm. Even when fear spread, he spoke with steady words. Still, he felt the pressure growing. He knew fear could break people faster than hunger. The alien observers watched all of this. They recorded how humans moved, spoke, and reacted. They saw arguments. They saw crying. They saw mistakes. This pleased them. It matched their predictions. But they also saw other things. They saw humans share food without orders. They saw engineers work past exhaustion. They saw parents calm children with stories, even when they themselves were afraid. These moments confused the observers, but they marked them as emotional reactions, not strength. The monitoring craft followed Galactica closely now. It adjusted its path when the fleet changed course. It listened to human signals. It watched human ships dock and separate. It never interfered. Not yet. On Galactica, small problems never stayed small. A broken pipe caused flooding in one section. Power failed in another. Each problem pulled people thinner and thinner. Commander Hayes ordered teams to respond, but there were never enough hands. One night, the lights flickered across several decks. People stopped in place. Some whispered. Others held their breath. The ship groaned, then settled. Power returned slowly. Hayes stood still during the blackout. He waited until the lights came back before speaking. When he did, his voice was calm. "Keep moving," he said. "We fix one thing at a time." The observers noticed this moment. Their records showed humans reacted to fear but did not freeze. This was unusual but not alarming. Other species showed the same behavior before collapse. Later, Hayes met with his senior crew. They sat around a small table. No one smiled. No one argued loudly. They spoke softly, like people afraid to wake something worse. "We can't keep this pace," one officer said. "People are tired." "I know," Hayes replied. "But we keep going." There was silence after that. Not agreement. Not hope. Just acceptance. The observers labeled this as resignation. Days passed. The fleet drifted farther from known space. Every jump was a risk. Navigation charts were old and incomplete. Still, the humans kept moving. The monitoring craft adjusted its systems to watch more closely. It zoomed in on daily routines. Meals. Repairs. Training drills. It expected decline. Instead, it found patterns. Humans argued but then worked together. Humans questioned orders but still followed them. When plans failed, they made new ones quickly. This behavior did not match the observers' past data. They shared these findings among themselves. Some dismissed it as delay before collapse. Others suggested longer observation. For now, they chose to wait. On Galactica, Hayes stood near a small window and looked at the stars. He did not know he was being watched. He only knew that stopping meant death. Behind him, the ship hummed softly. It was old, damaged, and tired. But it was still moving. And so were the humans inside it. The alien observers decided it was time to test their ideas. They did not want to destroy the humans yet. They wanted proof. Small proof. Careful proof. So they changed only tiny things and waited to see what would happen. The first test was quiet. A weak signal was sent toward the fleet. It was not strong enough to be seen as an attack. It slipped into the navigation systems like a shadow. Charts began to shift. Stars appeared in the wrong place. Jump paths felt unsafe. On Galactica, the navigation crew noticed the problem almost at once. Screens showed numbers that did not match. Lines drifted when they should stay still. At first, officers thought it was simple error. Then the problem spread to other ships. Commander Hayes ordered checks and rechecks. The crew followed procedure. Every step was correct. Still the problem remained. Fear began to rise again. The alien observers watched closely. In past tests, this was when fleets broke apart. Ships would argue. Commanders would freeze. Panic would spread. Instead, something else happened. Pilot Daniel Carter was not on duty when the alert came. He was resting in a narrow bunk, boots still on his feet. When the alarm sounded, he did not wait for instructions. He ran. In the flight control room, pilots argued about false readings and unsafe jumps. Daniel listened for only a moment. Then he spoke. "These charts are wrong," he said. "But the stars are not." Some pilots looked at him in surprise. He was breaking protocol. He was not assigned to navigation. Daniel pulled up old data. Visual star patterns. Manual references. He compared them with what he could see through external cameras. Slowly, a safer path appeared. At the same time, deep inside Galactica, engineer Michael Turner fought another problem. Power systems were acting strange. Load levels rose and fell without reason. Automatic systems failed again and again. Michael did not wait for command approval. He shut down parts of the system by hand. Sparks flew. Warning lights flashed. Someone shouted that he was risking a full blackout. Michael ignored them. "If the system is lying," he said, "I don't listen to it." He rerouted power manually using old cables and backup switches. It was messy and against every rule. But the lights stayed on. The observers recorded both actions. Humans acting without orders. Humans ignoring systems. This behavior should have caused disaster. It did not. The next test came soon after. A small threat was placed in the fleet's path. A debris field. Sharp metal. Old wreckage drifting without pattern. The observers expected confusion and loss. Laura Bennett was helping in a training room when the warning came. She was a civilian, once a school teacher. Now she trained volunteers who had never touched tools before. When panic spread through the lower decks, she did not shout. She gathered people close and spoke clearly. "Watch," she said. "Listen. Then move." She taught them how to secure doors, how to brace walls, how to pass tools safely. She did not care about rank. She cared about results. The volunteers learned fast. Some made mistakes. Others corrected them. They shared what they learned within minutes. Information moved faster than fear. The fleet entered the debris field with damage but not collapse. Ships scraped and shook. Alarms screamed. But people responded, not froze. Daniel flew cover for weaker ships. Michael kept systems alive longer than expected. Laura's team sealed breaches before they spread. The observers reviewed the data. Their models showed high failure rates. Reality showed survival. They adjusted their predictions. Humans, they noted, broke rules often. They ignored chains of command. They acted on instinct and shared knowledge freely. This should have caused chaos. Instead, it created movement. The observers began to argue among themselves. Some said this behavior was temporary luck. Others said it was a flaw in human structure that would soon destroy them. One observer raised a different idea. Perhaps human strength was not control but response. This idea was marked as unlikely. On Galactica, no one celebrated. There was no victory. Only relief. People returned to work. Repairs continued. Training expanded. Small lessons became shared habits. Commander Hayes reviewed reports later. He saw the rule breaks. He saw the risks taken. He did not punish anyone. "Survival matters more than perfection," he said quietly. The observers recorded this statement. It did not fit their logic. The fleet moved on, damaged but alive. The alien craft followed, silent and patient. The tests had begun. The battle began without warning. The fleet was in open space, moving slowly when alarms exploded across Galactica. Red lights filled the halls. Screens flashed with signals that made no sense. Enemy contacts appeared and vanished. Weapons fired at shadows. The alien observers had not planned this much damage. They had meant to watch, not destroy. But events moved faster than their control. Forces already in the region reacted on their own. The result was chaos. Galactica shook hard. The impact threw people from their feet. Metal screamed. Fire burst from broken panels. Communication lines went dark almost at once. In the command center, Commander Hayes tried to speak, but his voice did not carry. Screens went black. Orders never reached the fleet. One by one, systems failed. For the first time, there was no clear command. Ships drifted apart. Pilots could not hear control. Navigation data froze. For a moment, it looked like the end. Then people began to act. In a damaged fighter bay, pilots ran to their ships without being told. Daniel Carter pulled himself into his cockpit as smoke filled the air. His radio was dead. His screen showed only static. He looked out the canopy instead. He saw another fighter struggle to launch, engines coughing. Without thinking, Daniel moved closer. He fired his thrusters in short bursts, using his ship's wake to push the other free. No order told him to do this. He did it because someone needed help. In space, pilots formed small groups. They flew close, watching each other's movements. When one ship took a hit, another moved to shield it. They did not speak. They did not plan. They trusted. Inside Galactica, Nurse Emily Foster worked in near darkness. The medical bay was damaged. Lights flickered. Supplies were gone or buried under debris. The wounded kept coming. Emily tore strips from uniforms to make bandages. She used tools meant for one purpose to do another. She worked fast and spoke softly. "Stay with me," she told a young man with burns on his arms. "Breathe slow." She did not wait for doctors. She did not wait for permission. She made choices with what she had. When power failed completely, she used a small hand light held between her teeth. Her hands shook from fear and tiredness, but they did not stop. Around her, volunteers followed her lead. One held pressure. Another carried water. Someone else kept track of names on a scrap of metal with a marker. The alien observers watched the battle unfold. Their models showed total collapse at this point. No command. No communication. Heavy damage. Instead, the fleet moved like a living thing. Ships adjusted positions without shared data. When one ship broke away, another filled the gap. When debris threatened, pilots warned others using light signals and movement. Losses happened. Ships were destroyed. People died. But the fleet did not break. The observers tried to update their predictions. The numbers refused to settle. Every choice created new paths. Every reaction changed the outcome. This was not how systems were supposed to work. On Galactica, Michael Turner crawled through a narrow maintenance shaft. Heat burned his skin. The air was thick and hard to breathe. He reached a broken junction and stared at melted cables. There was no repair manual for this. Michael cut power to one section and rerouted another. He guessed. He listened to the hum of the ship. When it sounded wrong, he changed something. Finally, lights returned to part of the lower decks. Cheers echoed faintly through the metal. Michael smiled once, then kept moving. The battle dragged on. Time lost meaning. People acted until they could not anymore, then rested for seconds before acting again. Emily collapsed to her knees after the last wounded were stabilized. Someone handed her water. She drank without looking up. Daniel landed his fighter with a cracked hull and no fuel left. Another pilot helped guide him in using hand signals. The bay crew pulled him out as the doors closed behind them. Silence slowly replaced noise. The battle ended not with victory but survival. Commander Hayes finally regained partial control. He stood in the command center, staring at reports that came in late and incomplete. He saw the losses. He saw the damage. He also saw something else. Ships had saved each other without orders. Medical teams had formed without command. Repairs had begun while fighting still raged. Hayes felt something heavy lift from his chest. The alien observers reviewed everything. Their systems flagged error after error. Predictions failed again and again. Human behavior did not follow fixed rules. It shifted under pressure. It changed shape. Some observers felt something close to unease. "This species cannot be mapped," one record noted. Another responded, "All species can be mapped." But the data did not agree. The monitoring craft followed the wounded fleet as it pulled back into quiet space. Galactica burned in places. Her hull was scarred. Her people were exhausted. Yet the fleet moved on. Inside the alien records, a new line appeared. Uncertainty increasing. For the first time, the observers did not know what would happen next. The days after the battle were quiet but heavy. Smoke still drifted through parts of Galactica. Some decks were sealed forever. Empty bunks stood where people once slept. The losses were counted slowly, name by name, so no one would be forgotten. Fear did not vanish. It moved through the fleet like a cold wind. People spoke in low voices. Children stayed close to adults. Every strange sound made heads turn. Yet something else grew with the fear. People began to stand closer together. On Galactica, the lines between jobs faded. Mechanics worked beside farmers who had never held tools before. Soldiers carried water. Pilots helped move supplies. No one asked whose duty it was. In one damaged engine room, Michael Turner showed a group of civilians how to tighten bolts and check pressure seals. His hands were burned and wrapped, but he kept working. Slow and steady, he said. If it feels wrong, stop. A farmer named Thomas nodded and copied his movements. He made a mistake, then fixed it. Michael did not shout. He showed him again. Nearby, Laura Bennett taught small groups how to read simple repair charts. She broke each task into small steps. She reminded them that learning took time. Fear makes us rush, she said. We don't rush. Food became harder to manage. Storage rooms were half empty. Instead of hiding supplies, people shared them openly. Meals were smaller, but no one ate alone. Emily Foster helped set up a quiet room for the injured and grieving. She listened more than she spoke. Sometimes that was enough. Commander William Hayes watched all of this. He saw the reports. He walked the halls. He listened to arguments and apologies. He made a choice. In the next fleet meeting, Hayes spoke clearly. From now on, he said, decisions don't stop at my desk. If you see a problem and you can fix it, fix it. Some officers looked uneasy. This was not how fleets survived. Control was safety. Rules were strength. Hayes continued. Tell us what you do. Share it. But don't wait. The order spread quickly. People felt lighter. They did not feel free. They felt trusted. Plans became flexible. Routes changed when better ideas appeared. Teams formed and reformed as needed. Mistakes were admitted without fear. The alien observers saw everything. They reviewed hours of footage. Humans were tired. Humans were scared. Humans were damaged. Yet their systems did not show collapse. Instead, new patterns formed. Work moved like water, flowing where needed. Leadership appeared and disappeared without formal command. The observers argued. This is disorder, one said. It cannot last. Another replied, disorder should have ended them already. Their technology required perfect planning. Every action depended on prediction. Every outcome was calculated before it began. Humans did the opposite. They planned, then changed. They failed, then adjusted. They trusted people over systems. The observers ran new models. They added emotional factors. They added randomness. The results still failed. On Galactica, a navigation problem forced a risky choice. Charts were damaged. Jump options were limited. A strict plan would take weeks to fix. Instead, a group formed. Pilots, engineers, and civilians sat together. They argued. They tested ideas. They voted. The fleet jumped early. It worked. There were losses, but fewer than expected. Fear spiked, then settled. People learned again. Hayes did not punish the decision. He praised the teamwork. This is how we survive, he said. The observers recorded the statement. Their systems flagged it as illogical. Among the observers, doubt spread. Not doubt in human survival. Doubt in their own understanding. If humans cannot be controlled, one observer asked, what does that make them? There was no answer. The monitoring craft stayed close, silent, and watchful. It had followed many species before. None had behaved like this. Galactica moved forward, scarred but alive. The fleet did not look strong. It did not look united by command. It was united by choice. And that was something the observers could not plan for. The alien observers reached a final decision. Their data was complete yet useless. Every model ended in error. Every prediction broke apart under human choice. What they had seen could not be reduced to numbers. They gathered their records and reviewed them one last time. Earth had looked weak. The fleet had looked broken. Galactica had looked like a relic drifting toward death. That judgment had been wrong. Humans did not survive because they were strong. They survived because they chose. Again and again they chose action over fear, trust over control, and change over rigid plans. The observers sealed their records. In the final entry, humanity was not listed as hostile or powerful. It was listed as dangerous. Not because of weapons. Because of choice. Their monitoring craft pulled back slowly. Sensors dimmed. Signals faded. For the first time, the observers did not feel curiosity. They felt caution. A species that could not be predicted was a risk no system could manage. The craft turned away and vanished into deep space, leaving the human fleet alone. On Galactica, life continued without ceremony. There were no speeches, no celebrations, only work. Anna Collins stood near a small viewing window on a quiet deck. She was not a soldier or a leader. She was a civilian who helped where she could. Tonight, she simply watched the stars slide past. She did not know how close extinction had come. She did not know alien eyes had studied every human choice. She only knew the fleet was still moving. The stars looked calm and distant. They did not show danger or safety. They simply existed. Behind her, the ship hummed softly. It was a tired sound but steady. Repairs continued in distant decks. Voices echoed faintly through the halls. Someone laughed quickly as if surprised by the sound. Anna held a warm cup in her hands and breathed slowly. Around her, others paused in the same quiet way. Not to hope, just to rest. Commander Hayes passed by and nodded to her. He looked older than before but lighter. He did not stop. There was always something to do. The fleet moved as one, not by command but by shared will. Ships adjusted their paths to protect weaker ones. Information flowed freely. Lessons from past failures were passed on without shame. Humans adapted. They always had. In alien space, sealed records rested in silent archives. They would not be opened again. Some knowledge was too unstable to study further. The observers agreed on one thing before leaving. Humanity was not finished. On Galactica, Anna watched the stars until the lights dimmed for rest cycle. She turned away and walked back into the ship, joining the quiet movement of people who refused to stop. The fleet moved on. Not because it was chosen. Because it chose to continue.